Hello listeners, welcome to episode 3 of 50 Years of the Unofficial Countryside, a 4-part series about the Coal Valley Regional Park and its industrial history. Just to refresh your memory, the Coal Valley Regional Park is steeped in a long and varied industrial heritage, which has included quarrying, brickmaking, and farming and agriculture. These and other industries have shaped the park's landscape, creating lakes, nature reserves, country parks, rivers and canals, which have made up environments not just for us to enjoy, but for wildlife as well. In episode 2, we discovered a bit about the landscape and places created from industry in the upper valley of the Coal Valley Regional Park. This episode will explore the Middle Valley's industrial past. The Middle Valley is situated between the A40 and the Slough Canal Arm. Similar to the Upper Valley, it also has an industrial heritage of quarrying, and places such as Hardings Row Nature Reserve in Ivor Heath and Little Britain Lake near Cowley were once gravel pits. Hardings Row has a long history of gravel extraction. In the late 1800s, the south section of the reserve was quarried for gravel, and in the early 1900s it was later infilled with domestic waste. A large gravel pit was dug in the north section of the site and landfilled in the 1950s. The site also boasted an orchard at one time, but this has since been lost out to housing. Hardings Row is now a nature reserve with an abundance of flora and fauna. And Carol, a long-time supporter of Hardings Row, talks about some of the wildlife she has seen.
It's quite good for birds. We've got a variety of different birds there. Green woodpeckers were seen there recently as the ordinary grey spotted woodpecker, and there have been blackcaps there, and there are chiffchaff. I often hear the first chiffchaff there, as well as the blue tits, great tits, coal tits as well. So quite varied for a fairly ordinary bird life, but nice to see. Oh, we have some mallards that move in sometimes. There are slow worms there and grass snakes. There's also a reasonable butterfly population there. There are some speckled wood butterflies, and I've seen common blue, holly blue, lots of whites of one sort and another. It's a very local site.
Moving further down the middle of the valley, we encounter Little Britain Lake in Cowley. It was created as a result of gravel extraction in the 1930s, and from its humble beginnings as a gravel pit supplying materials to help with road and infrastructure, Little Britain Lake has since become a pleasant location for family days out, fishing, enjoying a walk, and looking out for the many birds which enjoy the lakes and its surrounding areas. Sandra and Lisa remember a visit to Little Britain Lake.
It was a nice afternoon out, that was the thing. They used to go down and feed the ducks and the swans and that, because the swans always came up, and the herons, they were nesting over there.
Nestled between the River Fraze and the River Cole, Little Britain Lake attracts many birds throughout the year, such as grey herons, tree creepers, and the great crested grebe. Carol remembers an encounter with a kingfisher when walking near Little Britain Lake.
Probably 7 or 8 years ago, walking and realising that there was a kingfisher on a branch on the other side of the mill stream, because that runs into the mill close to Ivor Lane, and standing and watching it as it flew off and landed on the next small shrub along, and walking towards it until it flew on to the next one, and had sight of that kingfisher probably for more than 10 minutes as it perhaps went the extent of its own range along the river, and then turned round and flew back again. And it was just amazing to be able to watch the kingfisher as it made its way. I don't know whether we were watching it more than it was watching us, but it stayed with us the whole of that short walk.
And Shirley shares a memory visiting Little Britain Lake in the 1970s.
We moved to Cowley when I was 8 years old. Mum used to push me there in the wheelchair. She bought me a net and I'd sit. She'd take me right to the edge of the water. So the fishing net had a big long handle, and I used to dip in, and she took an old jam jar. We'd empty any little fish that she'd call tiddlers into the jar and have a look at them, and then let them go. So we'd go up there sometimes on a nice day and catch tiddlers. It's a lovely peaceful place if you want to go and sit and think.
You might remember I mentioned the Grand Union Canal in the previous episode. In the middle valley of the Coal Valley Regional Park, the Grand Union bends eastward, passing between Useley and West Drayton as it travels into London. Lisa and Sandra share a memory of the Grand Union Canal near Cowley in the 1980s.
Walk along the canal and then cut across. It was safe and convenient, wasn't it? You weren't on the road, you were fine.
Well, that's it,
I do remember, in fact, now saying that, I do remember taking a bike up there once and then rode it up and down the canal.
up to Uxbridge.
Along the canal path, yeah, Uxbridge, and it must have been down towards Euston.
Christopher used to ride from Harefield down to West Drayton to go to work on the canal path.
Yeah.
When he lived in Harefield.
So
Because there was no transport, there was no buses from his end.
As well as the Grand Union Canal, branches or arms were often built off of it to aid the supply and movement of goods such as timber, bricks and gravel to the main line canal and then on to their destinations. One of these branches is the Slough Arm, which cuts through the Coal Valley Regional Park from the Grand Union near Cowley to Slough. It was opened in 1882 to serve the flourishing brick-making industry in Slough, Langley and Iver. Dush talks more about brickmaking in Langley and Slough and the Slough Arm.
Bricks had been fired. The next stage was to take them to Paddington, where what was then the Grand Junction Canal terminated. And what you would get actually was your brick fields may often be quite a distance from the main arm of the Grand Junction Canal. And what they realised is because they were excavating clay to make their bricks, it was also perfect for extending a branch of the canal. So you'd get side arms from the main branch of the canal, which would extend as close as possible to wherever you're making your bricks, so that you're minimising land transport of the bricks by horse and cart. And that way you save a bit of time and you can transport fired bricks much more quickly in bulk. And probably the biggest sidearm was called the Slough Arm, and it was built specifically to service the extensive brick fields in Langley and Slough. So bricks were loaded on barges in the Slough and Langley area and travelled up to Cowley, which is where it joined the main road.
In the late 1960s, the Slough Council considered plans to fill in a part of the canal and build a road over it, but there was vigorous opposition by the local community and the Slough Canal Group formed to fight the plans. Council members took notice of this opposition and the plans were eventually dropped. The stretch was reopened in the early 1970s and has remained open since. Although not created directly from an industrial past, Black Park Country Park has created its own industrial history. It was once part of the Langley estate, but is now owned by the Buckinghamshire County Council. Black Park's woodlands were a much-needed resource during World War I and II. The Canadian Forestry Regiment managed and harvested the wood, which was then sent to France to help build the trenches and airstrips. The management by the regiment during the two wars has contributed to the park's landscape today. Black Park has also been part of the film industry. A stone's throw from the famous Pinewood Film Studios, it has been used many times as a location backdrop for many films over the years, such as James Bond, Harry Potter and the Carry On films. Black Park has become a place offering a variety of habitats for wildlife, as well as wonderful places for us to enjoy. Lisa and Sandra share a winter memory of Black Park.
Around Christmas time,
Christmas.
when you get all the berries out and the trees.
If it was a real harsh winter and you had the real frosts and the snows.
Yeah, it was nice then.
Yes, and particularly because it's only hardened walkers that will go out at that time of year.
Farming and agriculture also have a presence in the Middle Valley. Fields grazed by cows and sheep have contributed to the shaping of the Coal Valley Regional Park's landscape. And although some of the farms and orchards and fields were lost to gravel extraction and roads, there are still areas of farmland that offer pathways to enjoy. Similar to the Upper Valley, the Middle Valley has also been shaped by the quarrying industry and the canal waterways. And in addition, industries such as brickmaking resulted in the Slough Arm Canal, which gave us another environment to enjoy, as well as a habitat for wildlife. Please join me for the final episode of the 50 Years of the Unofficial Countryside series, where we will conclude our journey with the Coal Valley Regional Park's Lower Valley. Thank you. This episode has been supported by the Heritage Lottery Fund.